What's up, y'all? Today we're going to be finishing the last couple of verses of James, and we're going to be seeing the very reason why James wrote this letter. So if you want to jump with me to James chapter 5 and the last couple of verses, 19 and 20. My brothers, if anyone among you wanders from the truth and someone brings him back, let him know that whoever brings him back a sinner from his wandering will save his soul from death and recover a multitude of sins. And so we see the reason why James writes this letter is not to judge the people in the church, but is to help the people refocus their lives and center their lives around Jesus, because they were centering their lives around themselves and being prideful and self-centered. And so this is the whole reason, and throughout the whole book we see different reasons why James is writing this letter to help restore the people back to Jesus. And so in the beginning, James talked about lack of wisdom, and that those people that lack wisdom, they shall ask. And when they ask, they should ask in faithfulness and believe, because they will receive wisdom when they ask. And it talks about how too often we don't listen to each other, and we quickly write somebody off just by the outward appearance or what they do. But James is telling them to be quick to listen, be slow to speak, and be slow to anger. Talks about persevering through trials, and that those who stand the test will receive the crown of life. And that is impossible without Jesus. And so when we think about trials, we tend to get nervous, anxious. We tend to want to do things our own way, but really we need to refocus our eyes and fix our minds on Christ, because only Christ can bring good through those trials. So James is telling us to continue to be faithful, persevere, and trust in Jesus. Then he goes on to say, instead of being hearers of God's word, we should be doers as well, because without doing what we say, then it becomes meaningless. And so James is challenging us in the church to practice what we hear, practice what we see, that Jesus is showing us, what Jesus is showing us. And then he goes on to say, we got to be all in, that there should be no partiality in our lives. Being all in, we got to love our neighbors as ourselves. And if we show partiality, then we are basically committing sin. Who is our neighbor? And so oftentimes we choose to love the people who are like us, but how often do we love the people that are different than us? And so James is telling the people, the rich people, to humble yourselves, and because there shouldn't be boasting with their status. And so that's a challenge to love people that are different than us. And then he says, faith without works is dead. And so a lot of times when we say, oh, I'm a Christian, okay, what makes you a Christian? Do you say, oh, I go to church, and that makes you a Christian? Or do you say, because I believe in Jesus and I do this and that? Is that why you say you're a Christian? And so James is going on to say, you gotta have works that backs up your faith. And so an inward change comes with an outward change. A lot of people can say, I believe in God, but it's really looking at their lives, looking at our lives, do we truly reflect that we believe in God? And so that's why James is saying faith without works is dead. Then he talks about self-control and controlling our tongues, because so often we say something that we wish we wouldn't have said. And so we must ask God to help us to have self-control over what we say in every area of our lives. He goes on to tell the people to humble themselves, and the Lord will lift them up. And we see that the people in the church would do whatever it takes to get their own way, to get their own power. And they may do that by pushing people aside. And James is telling them, no, that's not how we do it. We need to encourage each other and lift each other up and humble ourselves. I think what James is trying to get at here is the word restoration. And I have that on my shirt right here, restore. And I truly believe that God uses us, God uses you to restore each other. And God is the ultimate restoration in our lives, and He's the only one that can truly bring salvation into our lives. But I believe He uses us to do the same for other people, is to help bring other people closer to Jesus, is to be a reflection and to be a mirror and to be the hands and feet of Jesus in restoring the world and the people that God created, and bringing people back on track to living a Christ-like life. And so that's our challenge for the rest of the week, is to pray for somebody that you know are struggling, or that you know are facing some challenges, or that you know that are not on the right track. And so I think the best place to start is by praying for that someone.